Have you ever looked around and wondered why some people are naturally respected while others are overlooked, no matter how hard they try? It's not always about power, status, or how loud your voice is. Often it comes down to what you silently tolerate, the patterns you repeat without noticing, the quiet compromises that chip away at your presence. Respect is not something you chase, it is something you embody. The Stoics believed that dignity begins within, in the way you carry yourself, and the standards you set, without saying a word. If people treat you poorly, it's not always malice. Sometimes it's a reflection of what you've allowed again and again. In this video, we'll explore 5 subtle yet destructive habits that quietly erode your respect in the eyes of others. These are not just behaviors, they are signals, and once you remove them, you begin to show the world how to treat you. So take a deep breath and let's walk through this together. What you discover may just shift how others see you forever. 1. Let silence prove your strength. There's a quiet kind of power in not explaining yourself. In a world where everyone seems desperate to be understood, to be liked, to be validated, the one who speaks less, but with intention, stands out. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to be great, begin by understanding that you will be misunderstood." That's not a warning, it's a challenge. Stop over-explaining, because the moment you start defending every choice, you begin to erode your own authority. Imagine this. You decide to take a break from social media, to clear your head, to reconnect with real life. Someone asks, "Why haven't you been online?" You could go into a speech about mental health, dopamine cycles, digital detoxes, or you could simply say, "I needed the space." That's enough. A calm, clear statement. When you explain too much, you invite debate. When you speak simply, you invite respect. Think of someone who exudes quiet confidence. Do they walk into a room and announce who they are? No. Their presence speaks for itself. A lion doesn't need to convince the jungle that it's a lion, and you shouldn't need to justify your own peace. This shows up in daily life more often than we realize. You decide not to attend a gathering. Someone questions you. You start listing reasons, explaining yourself into discomfort. But the truth is, "I won't be joining" was already enough. But if you had simply said, "I won't be joining," you would have said all that needed to be said. Less gives you strength. More gives others ammunition. Even the way we speak about our goals reveals something. Say you start waking up early to read, to train, to focus. Someone scoffs. "Why wake up at 5? That's extreme." Don't launch into TED Talk mode. Just say, "It works for me." That's all. No permission required. There's a reason Rolls-Royce never runs ads explaining their prices. Power doesn't beg to be understood. It just is. Over-explaining is often just a mask for insecurity. We think that if we can get others to agree with our choices, then we'll feel more certain about them ourselves. But here's the Stoic truth. Certainty doesn't come from others. It comes from you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." When you estimate yourself too low, you try to buy credibility with words. When you know your worth, silence becomes a statement. You've likely seen this dynamic in relationships. One person always feels they must explain why they need alone time, why they didn't reply instantly, why they chose something for themselves. But in trying to be understood, they weaken their stance. Real intimacy doesn't require a courtroom defense. It requires clarity and presence. And sometimes a simple "I needed time" speaks more than any essay ever could. Over-explaining can even backfire in leadership. Picture a manager who constantly justifies every rule, afraid of pushback. Eventually, the team starts to wonder if the leader is even confident in the rules. Now, imagine another manager who says, "This is how we do it," with calm conviction, no aggression, just presence. People respect direction when it's delivered with quiet certainty. So ask yourself, where in your life do you talk too much to feel safe? With family, with co-workers, with friends who always need a reason to accept your no. The next time you feel that urge to justify, stop and ask, would someone who truly respects themselves say this much? And that's the heart of it. When you respect your decisions, others begin to respect them too. If you speak as though you need approval, you signal that your choices aren't strong enough to stand on their own. But when you say less, calmly, confidently, you build a foundation that others can't shake. Stop over-explaining. Let your presence speak. Let your boundaries speak. Let your peace speak. Because when you stop asking for respect with words, you start commanding it with silence, and in the silence, you'll find your next lesson. 2. Choose self-respect over approval. The need to please everyone is one of the most silent prisons a person can live in. You wear a smile that isn't yours, speak words you don't mean, say yes when every part of you wants to say no. Why? Because you're afraid. Afraid of being disliked, misunderstood, labeled selfish. But the Stoics would ask you this: why trade your peace for someone else's approval? Imagine you're at work. Your boss asks if you can stay late. You've had a long week, you've made plans, and every part of you wants to decline, but instead you force a smile and say yes. Not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what they'll think if you don't. That one moment may seem small, but it's a pattern. A pattern where your needs always come second. That's the weight of people-pleasing. You become a shapeshifter, always adjusting, always bending, never standing. Now think of a friend who constantly calls you to dump their emotions on you. You're barely holding it together yourself, but you answer every time. You listen, you nod, you carry their weight because you don't want to seem unkind. But what about kindness to yourself? What about the weight you're not letting go of? The Stoics believed in living according to nature. And what is more unnatural than living for the approval of others while silencing your own truth? Epictetus said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" Each time you shrink yourself for others, you teach them it's okay to take, and they will. Not because they're evil, but because you've trained them to. The person who's always agreeable often becomes invisible. When you're always available, people stop noticing your presence and start depending on your silence. If your presence is always available, it becomes invisible. But when you draw boundaries, suddenly they see you. Now flip the scene. Imagine walking into a room and you don't care who approves. You speak your truth, not harshly, but firmly. You say no without guilt. You choose stillness over pleasing noise. That is when you become powerful, not loud, not cruel, just untouchably centered. And the world responds. The ones who only stayed to take will leave. But the ones who truly value you will remain. So if you want to live with peace, if you want to be respected instead of used, break the habit of people-pleasing. Because when you stop trying to win everyone's favor, you start winning your own life. And once you've reclaimed that space within you, it's time to protect it from those who don't deserve access to it. 3. Stand without applause. Why do you need someone else to tell you you're enough? Why do you wait for a nod, a like, a compliment, just to feel worthy of your own life? Every time you look outward for validation, you're handing over the keys to your self-worth. You're saying, "Decide for me. Am I lovable? Am I smart? Do I matter?" And what happens when no one answers? Think of a child holding up a drawing, eyes full of hope. If their parent smiles, the child beams. But if the parent is distracted, doesn't respond, the child begins to wonder, was it not good enough? Was I not good enough? That child grows up. But the habit stays. Only now, it's not drawings. It's their dreams, their choices, their identity. They post online and refresh the page, waiting. They say something clever and look around, hoping someone noticed. They wear what others like, say what others agree with, do what earns claps, not what brings them joy. This is how many people live, chasing approval like it's oxygen. But what happens when the applause stops? Who are you when the room is silent? The strongest people don't need cheers to keep going. They don't wait for permission to live fully. They move with purpose, whether they're praised or criticized. That's the kind of strength the Stoics taught. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And when your judgment of yourself is always tied to other people's reactions, you'll never feel stable. Imagine a man who spends his life impressing others. He works for admiration, not meaning, but applause fades. And when it does, he realizes he never built his life on purpose, only on performance. He's lost, not because he lost attention, but because he never built himself from the inside out. Or imagine a woman with a bold dream. She wants to create something beautiful, but every time she shares it, people raise doubts. Are you sure? What if it doesn't work? And slowly she pulls back, not because she can't do it, but because their doubts became louder than her belief. And then it clicks. Those who doubt her don't live her life. So why let them govern it? You must stop waiting for the world to approve of you. Not because people don't matter, but because your life should not be shaped by those who won't live its consequences. A tree doesn't ask the wind if it's allowed to grow. It rises anyway. A lion doesn't seek permission to roar. It roars because it's its nature. And so must you. There's a warrior in every one of us. One who's been laughed at, doubted, dismissed, but kept going. Not because the crowd believed, but because something deeper inside whispered, "You're not done." And that's where real power begins, not with applause, but with conviction. So look back at your life. How many times have you stayed quiet because you feared what they'd think? How many dreams have you delayed, waiting for someone to nod? How many times have you dimmed your light just to be accepted? The world will always have opinions. Some will praise, some will mock. But none of it defines you unless you let it. You must become so grounded that praise doesn't inflate you and rejection doesn't crush you. The Stoics called this inner citadel, a fortress within you that no outside force can break. When you live from that space, everything changes. You walk into a room not needing to be the most liked, but simply being you. That's a kind of power the world respects, even if it can't always explain it. So do what sets your soul on fire. Not for applause, not for recognition, but because it's right, because it's yours. Leave a simple "enough" in the comments if this truth resonates. And if you want to keep walking this path of Stoic strength and self-respect, consider subscribing. No pressure, just presence. Next, let's explore how refusing to tolerate disrespect becomes the foundation of unshakable self-worth. 4. Raise your standard, not your voice. At some point you have to ask yourself, how much will I allow before I finally decide I deserve better? How many moments of being interrupted, ignored, dismissed, or subtly insulted will it take before I stop pretending it's fine? Disrespect doesn't always roar, it often whispers. It hides in the jokes that cut too deep, in the way someone forgets to listen, in how your presence is treated as optional. And the more you tolerate it, the more it grows. Every time you stay silent, you're not avoiding conflict. You're teaching people that your voice, your boundaries, your worth can be ignored. You've seen it at work. A colleague cuts you off. Your ideas go unnoticed while others get credit, and what do? You smile, you brush it off, but inside, it lingers. Now imagine instead you said calmly, "I wasn't finished." That one sentence, spoken with conviction, changes the entire dynamic. Because people treat you the way you show them to. The same applies to friendships. If you're always the one reaching out, always available, always giving while getting nothing back, it's not loyalty you're building, it's imbalance. You tell yourself they're just busy, but the truth is, consistency is a form of respect. And the absence of it is a form of clarity. What about love? How many times have you waited for someone to show up fully, only to receive half-effort, vague words and broken promises? You excuse the neglect and call it love. But deep down, it's not patience. It's forgetting your worth in someone else's comfort. True love does not require you to suffer to be seen. It does not ask you to accept crumbs while pretending it's a feast. If someone shows you they can't value you, don't try to teach them how. Walk away. Because the longer you stay, the more you forget what being valued actually feels like. The Stoics never taught us to tolerate abuse in the name of peace. They taught us that our peace comes from within, and we are responsible for protecting it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That includes the choice to walk away when someone crosses the line. You don't have to explode. You don't need to convince them. You simply need to decide, this is not for me. You weren't made to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. You weren't made to keep the peace while your heart breaks quietly. Your worth isn't measured by how much you can endure, how agreeable you can be, or how small you can become to make room for others. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to stand tall. And yes, when you start doing that, some people will walk away. Let them. Not everyone is meant to go where you're headed. There's no reward for being the one who bends the most. The world does not applaud you for tolerating mistreatment. It only watches to see how far you'll let it go. But when you stop tolerating disrespect, when you draw that line in the sand and stand behind it, the world adjusts. People take notice. Some leave. Some finally see your worth. But more importantly, you see it. You start living differently when you respect yourself. You speak with more clarity. You walk with more purpose. You stop explaining, justifying, apologizing for taking up space. You start sleeping better, smiling easier, because you're not carrying the weight of other people's comfort on your back anymore. You're finally walking your own path, eyes forward, shoulders back, knowing that your peace is not a favor, it's a standard. And those who can't meet it, let them go. Because the journey ahead is not for those who disrespect your presence, it's for those who honor it. And when you know that, you never have to raise your voice, your silence, your boundaries, your calm refusal to accept less. They'll speak louder than words ever could. That's when you begin to reclaim not just your dignity, but your life. And from here, we step into a power that no one can take, only recognize. 5. Walk your own path. Nothing steals your peace faster than the habit of comparison. The moment you start looking at someone else's life and wishing it were your own, you begin to lose sight of everything you've already become, everything you've overcome, built, and fought for. You might see someone winning and suddenly feel like you're losing. But ask yourself, who said this was a race? Who told you that your pace, your path, your story needs to match anyone else's? The Stoics remind us that the root of suffering often lies not in what happens, but in how we perceive it. And comparison is a distortion. a lie whispered into your mind, telling you that someone else's success diminishes your own. But it doesn't. Imagine a runner on a track, constantly glancing left and right. The more they look around, the more they lose speed. Focus slips. The goal fades. The same is true in life. When your eyes are fixed on others, you forget your own direction. Social media amplifies this distortion. You scroll through highlights, curated moments designed to impress. You see joy, but not the price behind it. You see smiles, but not the silence behind them. And deep down you wonder, why doesn't my life look like that? But you're not seeing the full picture. You're seeing highlights, not reality. You're seeing the filtered moment, not the pain behind the scenes. And yet, you compare your whole existence to that single frame. You envy someone's calm without seeing their chaos. You admire someone's beauty without knowing the battles they fight to feel worthy. And in doing so, you overlook your own light. But someone else's shine doesn't dim yours. There is enough space in this world for all of us to rise. You are not here to replicate anyone. You are not meant to blend in. You are here to evolve into the clearest, most grounded version of yourself. Think about it. The life you call ordinary may be someone else's miracle. Don't measure your blessings with borrowed standards. You don't need to romanticize suffering, but you do need to stop overlooking your blessings just because you're too busy scanning someone else's lane. Nature never compares. The sun does not ask the moon for permission to shine. The oak tree doesn't envy the rose. The eagle doesn't wish to swim like the fish. And yet each of them thrives in its own element, in its own time, in its own form. That's what you must return to, your own rhythm. You were born to walk your path, not to trace someone else's. Picture two artists. One stares at others, trying to match their colors, their strokes, their style. The other, focused, creates from within. Who do you think will leave a legacy? The one who imitates, or the one who trusts their own voice? Success, true, lasting, fulfilling success, comes from devotion to your own process. Comparison interrupts that devotion. It distracts you from your growth. And sometimes the very people you envy may be looking at you, wishing they had your peace, your patience, your resilience. You don't always see the strength you carry, but others do, which is why you must stop measuring yourself by someone else's ruler. The only person you need to be better than is who you were yesterday. That's it. Not better than your co-worker, not more liked than your friend, not more successful than your sibling, just more grounded, more centered, more aligned than the version of you from the day before. Life is not a competition. There's no scoreboard, no finish line, no medal for being faster than someone else. There is only your journey, your lessons, your pace. And when you embrace that, you stop rushing. You stop performing. You start living. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You don't need to fit into every room. You just need to be honest with yourself. The right people will feel your authenticity and stand beside you, not for the masks you wear, but for the truth you carry. The Stoics never told us to win admiration. They told us to master ourselves. And once you do that, the opinions of others begin to lose their grip on you. The prison of comparison leads to a slow kind of self-betrayal. You say yes when you mean no. You hide parts of yourself to fit into rooms that were never built for you. You lose your voice while trying to be accepted. But the truth is, no matter how much you bend, someone will always judge you. Someone will always misunderstand you. Someone will always have something to say. And that's okay. You cannot control how others see you. But you can control how you walk into the world. People who leave a mark don't do so by being agreeable. They do it by being authentic. By standing in their truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's lonely, even when it makes others uncomfortable. There is a kind of power that comes from not needing to impress anyone, from being okay with being misunderstood, okay with walking alone if you must. A lion does not look for applause from the sheep. It does not adjust its roar to keep others calm. It simply is. You must learn to carry that same energy, not arrogance, but certainty. Walk tall, even when no one claps, even when the crowd goes silent, because you are not here to win their approval. You are here to honor your purpose. That's where your peace lives. Not in the noise, but in the stillness of knowing that you are enough, just as you are. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling and wishing and wondering, pause, breathe, come back to yourself, your journey, your voice, your fire. Trust it, protect it, and keep walking forward, not to be better than anyone else, but to become the one version of yourself that only you can be. Because that is more than enough. And now, once you've stopped looking sideways, the next step is to look within and build unshakable discipline rooted in your own truth. Respect is not something you demand with volume or earn through perfection. It begins the moment you stop asking for permission to be who you are, when you no longer try to convince others of your worth. When you stop waiting for applause to feel seen, something inside you shifts. That shift is not loud, it is calm, it is steady, and it is powerful. The 5 habits we explored today are not just behavioral, they are deeply internal. Over-explaining your choices, chasing approval, tolerating disrespect, comparing yourself, and constantly trying to please others. These are silent thieves of dignity, and yet most people live with them every day, not realizing they are surrendering respect, one small compromise at a time. The Stoics understood this. They taught that inner freedom begins with self-command, that you are not defined by how others treat you, but by what you allow, what you walk away from, and what you no longer make excuses for. Respect follows the person who no longer needs it to feel whole. It follows the one who lives from principle, not popularity. When you begin removing these habits, the shift is subtle at first. People may not understand, some may resist, but over time, the world starts to adjust to your presence. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer perform to be accepted. You show up with clarity, boundaries, and calm confidence. And that is when respect finds you, not because you begged for it, but because you became someone who commands it without a word. If this message speaks to where you are right now, leave a simple "own it" in the comments. And if you're ready to keep walking this path with intention and strength, feel free to subscribe. Because what's coming next is not just about being respected, it's about becoming unshakable.